right, ladies and gentlemen, so we are going to be moving into lesson 24 from unit 3. So, lesson 24 is functions. It should be visible to you in your Google Classroom at this time. But again, this is unit 3, lesson 24. And like I said, this is the last official lesson that doesn't have anything to do with our final exam project. So, let's go ahead and get started.
There are two steps to using functions in JavaScript. First, we need to define our function, and then we need to call it. When you define a new function, you're simply giving a name to a defined set of actions you want the computer to perform. To call a function, you just type the name of the function, followed by parentheses. This is telling the computer to perform or execute the set of actions you gave a name to. You've already been calling functions when you use commands that end with parentheses. The only difference is someone else defined them for you. So let's walk through an example together. Notice that the toolbox now has a tab called Functions. There are two blocks in there, one for defining a new function and one for calling a function. Drag a new function block out and type in the name you want to give the function. Now add the code you want to run when the function is called. We'll add a fill command to set red, a no stroke to remove the outer line, and an ellipse command set to a random x and y position. Hey, we defined a function, but nothing happened. The reason is we forgot step 2. We need to call the function. To call the function, we drag out the other block in the Functions tab and add in the name of our function. Now that we have both defined and called our function, the code will actually run and the dot will appear. Defining a function simply gives a name to a block of code without actually running it. The definition can actually be written anywhere in your program. The rest of the code will run line by line, just as before. Calling a function runs the lines of code inside the function. Afterwards, the program returns to where it left off when the function call was made. The fact that function definitions can be placed anywhere means that your code can get messy and hard to read. We typically put function definitions at the end of our programs to help keep things organized. You may have noticed that there's one function you've been defining, but not calling, in every program you've written so far. The draw function is a special function that you, as the programmer, get to define, but that GameLab actually takes care of calling for you. By calling wherever you've defined as the draw function over and over 30 times a second, GameLab is able to string lots of still images into a smooth animation. Once you have written a procedure or function that you know works as intended, you can call the function as often as you wish without worrying about the details or problems you had to solve to get it working. By referencing a large and complex block of code by a single name, it makes it much easier to understand what a program is doing by reading the code, and also easier to locate and fix problems or errors. Let's go ahead and dive in.
All right, so the last thing that we are going to be doing is learning how to define and call functions. Like she said, we've already been doing that with the draw loop, which is a draw function. We just haven't called it that. You have been creating functions already. You can just create more of them now. As you get into making your game, ladies and gentlemen, it will behoove you to create functions. And then when you want that code to run, you'll simply just call the function in the part of the code where you need it. All right, let's go ahead and continue then. All right, let me make sure that this has been reset. Okay, so functions let you build your own blocks and decide what codes go inside of them. This program has already created two functions, but only one of them is being called. So if I run the program, so we can see I have draw balloons and draw sky. When I run the program, only the sky comes up. I'm not seeing any balloons. Call the second function to reveal the full image. Use the call function that is being called as a guide. Tip: just as you did with all of our other blocks, spelling and capitalization are important here. So I want to call my function draw balloons. I'm going to go into the function drawer. I'm going to pull in the call a function piece of code. I'm going to draw that to line 2. I am going to change the word my function to draw balloons. Again, double check your spelling, double check your punctuation. I'm pretty sure Ball. I missed an O. Check your spelling, check your punctuation. It all matters here. So now I have called up the draw sky. I have called up the block of code that is draw balloons. And see how complicated all that is? I don't want to have to keep doing that over and over and over again. So I do it once and then I call it up as many times as I want to. So I'm going to go ahead and hit reset and run, and there it is. I now have the balloons against the sky. So this is just bubble 2 is just an example in how to use the calling of a function. Once any issues or questions? All right, moving on. Okay, reordering code. Placing the code inside the function makes it easy to read and make changes to. Good names for functions indicate what your program is doing to a reader. You can call your functions in a different order to quickly make significant changes as to how your program runs. Do this. This program already has created 4 functions that draws parts of a scene. Unfortunately, it is not coming out right. Read the 4 functions so you know what they do. Call the function in the order that that draws the scene in the way that looks best to you. So I have draw fence, draw clouds, draw trees, draw background. Let me make sure let me start over. Okay, so if I run it, nothing happens because I have not called up any of my functions. So I'm going to go ahead and pull in, because I believe there were 4 functions. Yes, there are. I'm going to pull in 4 calling, and I'm going to call them up in no particular order because I need to see what they do before I can figure out what to do with it. So I'm just going to copy and paste draw background. Make that my first one. Draw trees. Copy and paste it. Draw clouds. Third. And like I said, this might not work out. I have no idea. And draw a fence. Okay, so now I have called up all four of my functions, which were already made for me. I have no idea what it's going to look like, but I'm going to go ahead and reset and run. All right, so that's a bit of a hot mess. Like, I I don't necessarily like that. I'm going to keep the background behind. I think I want the trees last, just because to me, I feel like the tree should be on this side of the fence. The tree, let's try that. So I'm going to go background, fences, clouds, trees. Reset and run. All right, I like that. I'm going to keep it. I think it looks all right. So again, you'll notice depending on what order you call them up in, and if I bring the draw this here, oops, I did not mean to do that. All I see is the background because it's going 1, 2, 3, 4. Remember, your program is always going to go in order. It literally will read the code and go in order 1, 2, 3, 4. So now my background is the last thing being drawn. As a general rule, always make sure your background is one of the first things being drawn. So I'm going to drag that back up here. Maybe you want the trees behind the fence, in which case drag the fence down to the bottom. Maybe that looks better to you. I don't know. It's really about how it looks best to you. Okay? But again, the goal here is to figure out how to organize your functions, your call functions, in order for the scene to make sense. So we're going to go ahead and hit finish. Okay, bubble 4 is just a prediction. It says doesn't matter where you create functions. So far, all of your functions have been created at the bottom of your code. What do you think will happen if you call a function before it is defined? Notice that the red square is drawn before its function is created, while the green square is after its function is created. Which of these do you think will be drawn? All right, so it says draw red, and then function red, and then it says draw green, and then the draw green function is pulled up. So this is a prediction. So go ahead and pick A. The red square will be drawn, but the green one will not. You cannot call functions before they're created. Or maybe you think it is B. The green square will be drawn, but the red one will not. You cannot call functions before they are created. Maybe you think C, both squares will be drawn. You can create functions anywhere you like in your code. Or D, neither square will be drawn. There is an error in the code. So take a moment, pick whichever one of those options you like. I don't know. Like, I think maybe the red square will be drawn, but the green one won't because you cannot call functions before they're created. That's what you think. So that is my prediction. It does not have to be your prediction. And let's see what ends up happening. All right, cool. So both squares showed up. So obviously that means that you can make your functions anywhere you want in your code. The only thing to note is that when you call them up, they are going to get called up in the order that they're called up in. Okay? So both squares do obviously appear. Once you have done your prediction, go ahead and hit finish. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are at the 5 and 6 portion. So practice and a quick check. And then I think for 7, Let me just make sure. Okay, so 5 and 6 were kind of quick ones. 7, 8, and 9 are where you're actually going to be practicing building your own functions. So let's take a look at the practice together. Normally I would make you do it on your own, but I will do 2 of these. We will do A and C. All right, calling functions in the draw loop. You can call a function inside the draw loop just as you would anywhere else in your code. Do this. A function that will draw a background has been created for you. A sprite has been created to move across the background. Note it. Call function inside the draw loop so that the sprite appears on the top of the background. Note, don't create functions inside of the draw loop. Make them at the bottom of your code. All right, so I have the function of draw sprite. All right, there it is. Obviously, I'm getting that weird after image thing. So I want to call up my function inside my code, inside the draw function after the background was created. So I am going to go to my function drawer. I'm going to call up my function after the background. Hopefully that will work. And change it to Flyman. That is, oh, I'm sorry, the name of the function is draw. My bad. I was looking at the name of the sprite. All right, run. No, that's not working. Huh, interesting. There we go. I was reading the code backwards. Go me. All right. So the draw function. We needed this. The call. We needed to call up the function inside the draw function, which is exactly what we did. So we called it up, and then we draw the sprite. So there it is. We have our background and our lovely little flying bot going across. Again, call up your function for tree's background inside the draw loop. It always helps to actually read directions. I'm going to go ahead and finish on that one. And we'll also do letter C. Okay, a nice benefit from using functions is to remove repeated code that you can now easily make changes to multiple places in your code. Just change how to create functions, and your program will use the new code everywhere your function is called. Make changes to the set flyer so that the flyer starts at a random y location between 0 and 400 and moves random velocity every time it is reset. All right, so let's see. So we see he's moving at a set pace, and whenever I reset it, he's coming in at that same exact location. So instead of having to redo a bunch of code everywhere, instead I am just going to change the function. So I'm going to go into my math. I'm going to create a random number for my y location between 0 and 400, like it asked me to. Additionally, I want the velocity to be random as well. So the flyer velocity, which is currently -1, I'm going to make a random number between, let's say, -5 and -1 every time I reset the program. All right. So I've made some changes to my set flyer, and let's see what happens. So it came in a little higher. It looks like it's moving a little faster. I reset it. It's higher still. Pretty low moving across. Oh my goodness, super slow. Okay, so again, I created a random location for my y location, a random location for my velocity x every time I run the program. All right, for number 6, and again, you'll have to finish B and D on number 5. For number 6, you're just telling 3 ways in which you think that functions can be useful when you are writing programs. And then 7, 8, and 9, you are actually going to be creating some functions. And then, of course, calling them up inside your game. All right, so ladies and gentlemen, the remainder of the time is yours, so do your work. As always, if you need help, please make sure that you ask. Other than that, this is your time to work. And I am going to go ahead and stop the video.